DAE just not really like most of the comedy movies that have come out in the past 2 decades? I think the most recent one I really liked was Idiocracy, and that's almost 20 years old already. Last good full comedy movie I've seen was Game Night. I haven't watched a ton of films in recent years, but that one is honestly one of my favorite recent comedy movies. OFC, I've enjoyed other films in recent memory. But for straight up just comedy, Game Night was the last one I thoroughly enjoyed. Not just comedies. But yeah, it's like Hollywood, etc. has a mad fiend to remake movies less well than the originals. And to use the worst bullshit to make anything new. Try the new Dungeons & Dragons movie if you want to really waffle stomp your way out of this universe and into one that ought to have everyone involved in that movie criminally charged. Don't forget the changes in your taste in 20 years. I was a kid when Star Wars came out and I loved it. But by the time of the 3rd episode, I thought that things like those forest mini gorilla creatures were too cutesy and I hated it. I haven't seen a film that I've said wow or wanted to watch again since Django. Music too. I do playlists by year. Every year the playlist gets smaller and smaller. I can't imagine still listening to any song released now in 20 years. Utter garbage. 21, 22 Jump Street, Dope, Game Night, We're the Millers, What We Do in the Shadows, Spy, The World's End, Jackass 3 and 4, Walk Hard, The Dewey Cox Story, Scott Pilgrim. Those are just the 2010s and the 2000s had even more good ones. But also there was a lot of fucking terrible comedies during those times and before then. It's always been that way. 90s was filled with terrible comedies. I do agree that most creative projects are soulless and somewhat worse now. Though. What is the longest time you have gone without showering? Around a week. I briefly had to live with my ex's family and their house was disgusting. The bath was literally vile. Human and animal filth. One of their cats routinely pissed and shat in the bath. I couldn't bear to go in there any more than I had to. If I didn't wash, at least I was only sitting in my own filth and not 3 other people's in the turds. When I did wash, I'd have to scrub down the whole bathroom, that I could reach through the stacks of garbage, and get rid of all the revolting pubic tumbleweeds, mystery stains, damp and mold, and fight to clear a space on the floor amongst all the crusty clothes and rubbish for a mat to step onto. Willingly or unwillingly? Willingly like a day. Unwilling when I was in the military and at JRTC for a month. So imagine you're wearing pretty much the same 2 sets of clothes. You're in the fucking humidity in SWLA in the middle of fucking summer and all you can use is baby wipes to take hot spots washes. Let's just say after the military I will never take a hot shower in a comfortable bed for fucking granted. I mean, you know, you smell rancid when you don't even want to get into a sleeping bag with yourself at night. 7 days I think. Did the bonus days before whacking started. It was 2015, so the mud was insane, and by the time I got to a hotel to shower I needed 3 rounds of body wash / shampoo to get all the mud out. To all the folks who haven't showered due to depression, I get it. I really do. It's hard. Just wanted to share my experience that a hot shower in the morning for me is the single thing that blasts through that wall of fog and helps me have a goodish day. When I have the capacity for a single action on a bad day, it's always a shower. When was the last time you screamed your lungs out? When I was 13, me, my sister and a friend were bored in the middle of the countryside, which in my country is very flat, agrarian and empty, except for cows. So we started a competition for who could manage to make the loudest echo screaming at the void. Needless to say, we had to scream at the top of our lungs to get any echo to begin with, since the only thing that could echo was a tree line at 800 meters away and a house at 200 meters, which we were not pointing at. About 6 to 7 years ago I found out my then BF of 3 years was cheating me on. I completely shut down. Quit attending classes. Didn't talk, eat or function at all really. My dad took me to this remote hill outside the city in the middle of the night. Told me I can choose if he stays in the car or comes with me, but he wants me to climb up to the top. Scream everything I had bottled up last couple of days and let go of my pain. After about a minute or so of me just screaming my heart out, I started cussing in every language I speak and wished my ex a lot of pain and misery. It's safe to say we were not there alone. The cops were called. A couple of weeks ago. I was in the thick of busy season. I worked in public accounting up until recently. I was absolutely exhausted. Our toddler recently entered the terrible 2s and every moment was tantrums. I just found out someone had fraudulently appended a credit card in my name. Financially I was sinking despite working so fucking hard. And the kicker was that as I walked my son's empty stroller home from daycare drop-off, the skies opened and it began to pour and the wind knocked the stroller over. I screamed for about 20 seconds. Then I got up to my apartment and screamed again. I needed it. I don't even care if I disturbed any neighbors in my building. What keeps you up at night? Work, particularly sad cases at work such as abuse or patient that passed away. Shifts where multiple patients are close to death or die aren't great. Or a patient you had to hand over to the next shift but was at a real make or break point. Sometimes I just text the doctor I handed over to so I can get some closure and go to sleep. Or cases where I think I've made a mistake or know I've made a mistake. Being lonely is another one. What if I never find someone? What if I'm not good enough? Aging and coming to terms with it. I'm 32 recently, but I can't wrap my head around being an adult. Existential dread, but also a fair amount of rumination about not really wanting to live. Trying to convince myself I'll feel something again. I'm not really living but just existing? Being unable to forget the only person I was ever in love with. Craving to be with her sometimes but aware that I'm most possibly just idealizing someone who's not what I think they are. Intensely loving my family but recognizing they are the main reason why I am the way I am. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Anxiety. I wake up anywhere between 2 a.m. and 3:30 a.m. to think about things that I don't actually need to worry about. Typically from that list is finances, which are fine. Losing my job, also fine. Career decisions. Dying. Not being dead but the actual act of dying. Family health creeps in there. Sometimes it's thinking about my parents who are both gone. And sometimes it is simple things like I don't walk the dog enough or exercise enough. My solution is to turn on Futurama and use it to clear my mind. Shout out to /r/Futurama_sleepers.